Buried beneath the roar of 60 million journeys lies an origin story few travelers ever consider. In 1942, New York staked its future on 1,000 acres of swamp, betting $100 million on a wartime gamble that would transform Idlewild into JFK, America's global gateway. But how did contested marshland turn into the world's crossroads, and what battles, tragedies, and ambitions shaped every turn? The complete history starts where no plane could land. In 1942, New York City took control of more than 1,000 acres of marshland in southern Queens, land so waterlogged and wild that some locals doubted anything could be built there. Wartime urgency left no room for hesitation. By 1943, crews armed with bulldozers and barges began the colossal task of transforming tidal flats into a foundation strong enough to hold the world's largest airport. Millions of cubic yards of sand and fill were hauled in, raising the ground above the tides and layering it with concrete. 70 miles of storm sewers were buried beneath what would become runways, draining the marsh and keeping the new airfield dry. Engineers and laborers worked through shortages in steel and cement, often slowed by rationing and the demands of the war effort. By the time the airport opened on July 1, 1948, 6 runways stretched across what had once been open water and reed deeds. The cost was nearly $100 million, a staggering sum, but the result was a feat of engineering, a modern airfield built from nothing but mud, grit, and ambition. Idlewild's next leap came not from a single grand terminal, but from a bold experiment in airport design. Instead of one building for all, the Port Authority invited each major airline to construct its own terminal, clustered around a central roadway. Austin Tobin, the Port Authority's executive director, spent years in tense negotiations, offering long-term leases that gave airlines both control and a powerful incentive to invest in their own brand. By the mid-1950s, 12 carriers had signed on, each eager to outdo the next with modernist facades and signature lounges. The first Pan American Airways flight to London took off, setting a new standard for international service from New York. Passengers poured in, 5 million by 1955, drawn by the promise of streamlined connections and the prestige of airline-specific terminals. Idlewild's decentralized model became a magnet for global carriers, but the rapid growth hinted at challenges just over the horizon. Shock swept the nation on November 22, 1963, when President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. In New York, grief turned quickly to action. Just 27 days later, on December 24, 1963, Governor Nelson Rockefeller signed a bill that forever changed the identity of Idlewild Airport. The state legislature moved with rare speed, passing the measure in a single day after Assemblyman Charles Miller introduced it. The decision was met with both applause and skepticism. Supporters called it a fitting tribute to Kennedy's service as a Navy pilot and to his vision for American aviation and space. Critics worried the change was too hasty, that it might confuse travelers or erase a local landmark. Yet the new name, John F. Kennedy International Airport, was adopted immediately by the Port Authority, appearing in official press releases before the year's end. For many New Yorkers, though, Idlewild still lingered in conversation and on cab receipts. But the rebranding was unmistakable. The airport now carried the weight of a national symbol, linking its future to the memory of a fallen president. By the late 1950s, the airport's architecture was making headlines almost as often as its flight schedules. The International Arrivals Building opened in 1957, stretching longer than 2 city blocks and boasting the largest customs hall in the world. Travelers stepped into a space filled with glass walls, gleaming terrazzo floors, and a sense of boundless possibility. Pan Am unveiled the Worldport Terminal in 1960. Its elliptical, flying saucer roof seemed to float above the tarmac, a futuristic canopy that became an instant icon. The Worldport's design promised speed and spectacle, letting passengers walk straight from curb to jet in minutes. Eero Saarinen's TWA Flight Center, completed in 1962, took the idea of flight and turned it into concrete. Sweeping curves, soaring shells, and sunlit corridors gave the terminal the look of a bird poised for takeoff. Saarinen's building became a destination in itself, drawing visitors who came just to marvel at its shape or sip coffee in its lounges. This was an airport that didn't just move people, it dazzled them. On February 7, 1964, the Beatles landed at JFK, greeted by thousands of screaming fans and a wall of flashbulbs. The airport became a stage for global arrivals, from movie stars to world leaders. By 1970, 12 million passengers passed through its gates every year. In 1977, the Concorde touched down, its needle nose and sonic boom announcing a new era of supersonic travel. For a moment, JFK stood at the center of the world's imagination, a gateway promising glamour, speed, and the thrill of the jet age. By the late 1980s, the airport's original terminals strained under the demands of modern air travel. Passenger numbers soared toward 30 million by the middle of the 1990s, pushing facilities built for the jet age past their limits. Lines lengthened, security concerns deepened, and the once glamorous terminals grew outdated against a backdrop of global competition and new threats. The Port Authority faced a daunting task: to overhaul a living, breathing airport without shutting down the city's international gateway. Engineers and planners turned to Terminal 4 as the first answer. Conceived in the early 1990s and backed by a $1.4 billion investment, Terminal 4 would become the anchor of JFK's modernization. Construction replaced the aging International Arrivals building, expanding capacity for international flights and integrating new security protocols shaped by lessons from the 1988 Lockerbie bombing. The design prioritized open sight lines, centralized screening, and flexible gates, setting a new standard for passenger flow and safety. When Terminal 4 opened in 2001, it stood as a symbol of ambition. It was bigger, more secure, and able to handle the airport's relentless growth. But mobility inside the airport remained a challenge. The sprawl of terminals and parking lots, separated by busy roadways, turned simple connections into logistical puzzles. In response, planners began work on a dedicated rail link, the AirTrain JFK, in the 1990s. The AirTrain would eventually knit together terminals, parking, and city transit, promising to move travelers efficiently across the sprawling complex. These massive projects, funded by a mix of public and private dollars, signaled a new ERA. The Port Authority committed billions of dollars to keep pace with rising demand and the shifting realities of global aviation, laying the groundwork for the airport's next great transformation. On July 17, 1996, Trans World Airlines Flight 800 lifted off from John F. Kennedy International Airport and vanished minutes later in a fireball over the Atlantic. All 230 people on board were lost. The National Transportation Safety Board launched one of the largest investigations in aviation history, piecing together wreckage from the ocean floor. After 16 months, investigators traced the cause to an electrical spark inside the center fuel tank, not a bomb or missile, as first suspected. The disaster led to sweeping changes. New rules required inert gas systems in fuel tanks and stricter wiring inspections on every commercial jet. Those reforms shaped a new era of airline safety, born from tragedy. At 7:59 a.m. on September 11, 2001, American Airlines Flight 11 left JFK's runway, bound for Los Angeles. Within hours, the airport fell silent. The entire U.S. airspace shut down, an order never given before. Flights were diverted mid-air, terminals emptied, and armed officers patrolled deserted concourses. The shock of that day forced a complete rethinking of airport security. By November 2001, the federal government passed the Aviation and Transportation Security Act, creating the Transportation Security Administration. Uniformed TSA officers replaced private screeners, and new rules reshaped every checkpoint, from baggage screening to cockpit doors. As travelers struggled to regain confidence, JFK accelerated long-delayed projects. The AirTrain opened in December 2003, linking terminals and subways, promising safer, more predictable journeys in a world forever changed. Today, more than 60 million travelers pass through JFK each year, making it one of the busiest airports in the world. The Port Authority has launched a $9 billion redevelopment, the largest in its history, focused on creating a truly global gateway. The centerpiece is the new Terminal 1, set to open in 2026, designed to replace aging facilities with soaring spaces, advanced security, and sustainable technology. Terminal 5, once a symbol of mid-century innovation, was reborn in 2008 and now anchors JetBlue's operations. Planners are betting on green design, expanded capacity, and seamless transit to keep JFK at the forefront of international aviation for decades to come. Every minute, JFK connects New York to more than 100 countries, shaping economies, cultures, and lives in real time. As global travel surges and cities compete for influence, the airport's evolution is far from over. Its future will help define not just a city, but the world. Thanks for watching.